Okay, let's unpack this. Chris Voss, he literally wrote the book on high-stakes negotiations.
Comes from his FBI background.
Exactly, an FBI hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
But the really captivating part is how he insists these intense tactics, they're actually the key for, everyday stuff too, getting what you want.
Right. Before we get into all the tools and techniques, what's kind of the big foundational idea from his whole journey that really jumps out?
That's a great question. For me, it's how his story shows this massive shift, really, away from pure logic in negotiation towards the power of, human psychology.
Yeah.
Emotion, all the messy stuff.
Messy stuff.
Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? Could the real secret to influencing people actually be about embracing that irrationality we usually try to, suppress?
Embrace irrationality.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely a hook. So for you listening, our mission with this deep dive into Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, is exactly that. We want to pull out those kind of surprising insights and give you practical tools, things you can actually use. Right. The goal is to help transform how you communicate, how you get results. Doesn't matter if it's a huge business deal or, just getting the kids to tidy up.
Because the underlying psychology, it's often the same.
Astonishingly similar, yeah. Whether the stakes are sky high or seem pretty small, Voss gives us a kind of roadmap for navigating it all.
Okay, so let's dive into where this all came from, the origins. Voss was this FBI veteran, right? But he was pretty skeptical about the traditional negotiation theories.
Yeah.
The Harvard stuff.
Yeah, he thought his street smarts were, enough. Didn't need the academic theory.
And then he gets into this role-playing thing at Harvard. Of course, Professor Robert Mnuchin and Gabriella Bloom, they're playing kidnappers, demanding $1 million for his son.
And Voss, this, hardened FBI guy.
He just hits them with this simple question again and again. How am I supposed to do that?
Just to that.
Just that. Calmly. Repeatedly.
And it worked. Against these Harvard professors.
Completely disarmed them. It wasn't about logic. It showed his intuitive skills. Real-world stuff versus the theory.
Wow. So he wasn't arguing the points.
No. He was making them deal with the practical problem from his side. Shifting the burden,
That's clever.
So a year later, 2006, he actually talks his way into the Harvard Law School winter negotiation course. Big names there, MIT, Tufts students too.
And he's still challenging the old ways.
Totally. There was this one student, Andy, super smart, wore it like a badge of honor. Voss used that same, how am I supposed to do that, against Andy's perfect logic. And Voss kept winning. He said it was like playing tennis with a modern racket against old wooden ones. Almost easy.
So what he was learning really was that without understanding psychology.
Exactly. Without accepting that people are, as he puts it, kind of crazy, irrational, impulsive, emotionally driven animals. All the brain power and logic, it doesn't help much.
And his FBI techniques weren't just for terrorists.
Nope. He found they worked with normal humans, too, unlocking better interactions, deals, you name it, in all parts of life.
So how did the FBI itself get there? I mean, shifting from maybe a more forceful approach to empathy. That seems like a big leap for an organization like that.
It was a hard road, really born from some tragic failures. The whole FBI approach to hostage situations had to change after some really bad outcomes.
Right. You had situations where the old ways just didn't work. Things like the Attica prison riots back in '71, the Munich Olympics in '72.
And that plane hijacking in Jacksonville '71, George Giff Jr.
Oh, yeah, that was awful. The FBI got impatient, shot an engine.
And Giff killed 2 hostages, then himself. Just tragic.
And that led to real change, legally even. The Downs v. United States decision in '75.
Which basically said what?
It mandated that a reasonable attempt at negotiations must be made prior to a tactical intervention. They had to try talking first.
So, okay, they have to negotiate. What did they try first?
Well, they grabbed onto the big theory at the time. Fisher and Urey's getting to the Harvard approach.
The rational problem-solving method. Separate person from problem, focus on interests, win-win.
All that. It was the gold standard. Makes sense.
Seems logical, but then...
Then you get Ruby Ridge in '92.
Yeah.
Waco in '93. These incredibly intense sieges.
And getting to, yes, didn't cut it.
Not even close.
Yeah.
How do you find a win-win with someone who's completely irrational, maybe thinks they're talking to God? The logic-based approach just crumbled.
It showed a massive gap, didn't it, when faced with pure emotion or delusion.
Exactly. And right around then, the work of behavioral economists like Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman was really taking off.
The guys who proved we're not rational actors. Cognitive bias, framing effect, loss aversion.
All that. Kahneman's System 1 and System 2 thinking.
System 1 being the fast, emotional gut reaction.
Right. And System 2, the slow, logical part. And crucially, System 1 often runs the show, even when we think we're being logical.
So the idea of the purely rational actor was kind of flawed from the start.
Pretty much. So the FBI, realizing this, made a really radical shift in the 80s and 90s.
Towards what?
Towards therapy. Counseling techniques, basically. Based on this really simple idea. People just want to be understood. Deep down.
Which brings us to Voss's core concept, tactical empathy.
Yeah. It's not just listening. He calls it active listening turned into a martial art.
Martial art, okay.
It means understanding their feelings, their mindset right in the moment, and digging into what's behind those feelings, the goal, to increase your influence.
So it's empathy, but with a purpose, a strategic purpose.
Exactly. Voss jokes that while the Ivy League schools were crunching numbers, the meatheads at the FBI, his words, became experts in empathy.
And he says,
Our way worked, emphatically.
So the big takeaway here is that real influence isn't about forcing your logic onto someone.
No. It's about embracing their emotional side, their, sometimes irrational nature.
Which makes you wonder, right? How much better could our own daily talks be if we just prioritized understanding first before jumping to solutions? That's a huge question. And it sets us up perfectly for the actual tools Voss talks about, the core methods. Let's start with one you might not expect. Your voice.
Right. The power of your voice tone. He breaks it down into 3 main types.
Okay, what are they?
There's the late-night FM DJ voice.
Yeah.
Deep, slow, soft, calming.
Got it. Like verbal Valium.
Kinda. Then there's the positive, playful voice light, encouraging. And finally, the direct, assertive voice, which he says you should almost never use. Very rare cases.
So that DJ voice, what's the magic there?
It's about flipping an emotional switch. He talks about this bank robber, Chris Voss, 5-hour standoff, totally stuck.
Tense situation.
Super tense. Voss takes the phone, switches immediately to that late-night FM DJ voice.
Yeah.
Instantly calmed things down, kept the guy talking. Just shows how tone alone can shift the whole emotional landscape. Open things up.
Okay, so you set the mood with the voice. What's next for building that connection subtly?
Mirroring. Also called isopraxism.
Mirroring, like copying body language.
Not exactly. It's simpler. You just repeat the last 1 to 3 important words they said.
That's it. Just repeat their words back.
Yep. Sounds almost too simple, right? But it makes them feel heard, understood, safe. It sends this subconscious signal. Hey, you and I, we're kind of similar, without actually agreeing.
Ah, so it's similarity, not agreement. Clever.
Remember Chris Voss, the bank robber?
Yeah.
Voss mirrored him. Voss said something like, we chased your driver away. And Voss just mirrored back, we chased your driver away.
And what happened?
Voss just started talking. Vomited information, Voss calls it. Revealed an accomplice they didn't even know about.
Wow. Just from mirroring a few words.
It taps into that basic human need for validation, There was even a study showing waiters who mirrored customer orders got 70% bigger tips.
70%. Okay, I'm mirroring everyone from now on.
Uh-huh. It's powerful. Builds rapport without being pushy.
Okay, so voice sets the tone. Mirroring builds rapport. What builds on that?
Labeling. This is where you actively call out the emotions or the situation you're observing.
How do you do that?
Using phrases like, it seems like, it sounds like, it looks like. You're not judging, just stating what you perceive. It seems like you're feeling frustrated.
So you're acknowledging their feeling.
Exactly. And it does 2 key things. One, it diffuses negative emotions. Just naming anger or frustration can actually lessen
Sets the power out of it.
Kind of, yeah. And 2, it reinforces positive emotions if you label those too.
Got an example?
A really dramatic one from a Harlem standoff. Voss and his team for 6 hours just kept using labels. Things like, it looks like you don't want to come out. Over and over.
6 hours of just labels. Did the guys inside even respond?
Not verbally, for hours.
Yep.
But eventually, 3 fugitives surrendered. And later they said, you calmed us down.
Just by being acknowledged. Wow.
That simple act of being seen, being understood, even in that negative state, brought them down.
That's incredible. And there's a proactive version of this too, right? The accusation audit.
Yes. This is brilliant. You basically say all the bad things the other side might be thinking about you before they get a chance to say them.
Get ahead of it.
Totally. Voss tells this story about a negotiator named Anna dealing with $1 million contract. She started by saying, it sounds like you think we are the big bad prime contractor trying to push out the small business.
Took the words right out of their mouth, potentially.
Exactly. And the response, immediate denial, defensiveness dropped, and they became much more open. She disarmed them by voicing their unspoken accusations.
It flips the dynamic, doesn't it? You say it, they almost have to deny it.
Takes all the sting out, which leads perfectly into one of Voss's most counterintuitive ideas. Beware, yes, master, no.
Right. We usually think yes is the goal, no is failure. He flips that.
Completely. He says getting a quick yes is often dangerous. It can be fake, a counterfeit yes, just to make you go away while hiding real objections.
The polite yes, that doesn't mean anything. We've all had those.
Totally. But no, Voss argues, is pure gold.
Gold.
Because saying no makes the speaker feel safe, secure, in control. It preserves the status quo for them, and crucially, it opens the door for clarification.
So no isn't the end.
It's often the start of the real negotiation.
Yeah.
That's why he suggests starting with questions designed to get a no.
Like instead of, do you have a few minutes?
Ask, is now a bad time to talk? Most people will say no, meaning it is a good time, but they feel in control because they said no.
That's subtle.
And the email magic technique, the one-sentence email. Have you given up on this project?
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that one. People hate feeling like they've given up.
Exactly. It plays on loss aversion, and it signals you're ready to walk away. Usually gets a fast response, starting the conversation again.
So the principle behind all this is, what did he call it?
Negotiate in their world. It's not about convincing them with your reasons. It's about guiding them to convince themselves that your solution is actually their idea.
Ah, the illusion of control again.
Always. Which brings us to the Holy Grail phrase, the real breakthrough moment.
Not yes, but.
Trigger, that's right. Voss says this is way more powerful than yes.
Why? That's right.
Because that's right, signals genuine understanding. It means the other person feels you've truly grasped their point of view, their world. They've embraced what you said.
Okay, how do you get that? That's right.
Through a good summary. You combine paraphrasing what they've said with labels for their emotions, accurately reflecting how they see things.
You basically articulate their position even better than they did.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
He tells the story of the Jeffrey Schilling hostage negotiation in the Philippines.
Okay.
A Filipino officer, Benji, summarized the kidnapper, Sabaya's worldview, his demands, his vision. And Sabaya listened and finally said, that's right.
And the impact?
Huge. From that exact moment, the $10 million ransom demand just vanished. Sabaya felt understood, and that core demand disappeared.
Just like that, because he felt heard.
It was a turning point. But Voss is careful to contrast that's right with you're right.
What's the difference? You're right. It sounds positive too.
It often means intellectual agreement, but no real buy-in or commitment to act. Like when his son Brandon would say, you're right, Dad, about dodging tackles on the football field.
But then just keep smashing into people.
Exactly. He agreed in theory, but hadn't internalized it. You're right can just be a way to get you to stop talking. That's right means they get it.
Okay, that distinction is crucial. So let's move into some of the more advanced stuff, complex dynamics, starting with then their reality.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. First big one, don't compromise, never split the difference.
The title of the book, so no meeting in the middle.
He argues against it strongly. Says it's usually the easy way out, driven by fear or just wanting the negotiation to be over.
But isn't compromise sometimes necessary?
He thinks it often leads to subpar results. Both sides give up things they care about and end up with something neither really wanted, like wearing one black shoe and one brown shoe. It's a solution, but a weird, unsatisfying one.
Better to hold out for the right pair, even if it takes more work.
That's the idea. Find a creative solution. Don't just slice the pie down the middle.
Okay, what else under bending reality? Deadlines.
Deadlines is your ally. Most people dread deadlines, right? They see them as pressure points.
That's no.
Voss says flip that. Deadlines are often arbitrary, flexible, and here's the kicker. Reveal your deadline.
Reveal it. Won't they use it against you?
Counterintuitively, no. Research shows hiding your deadline makes you more likely to rush concessions as it approaches, while they, thinking time is unlimited, hold out. Revealing it can actually put pressure on them.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. And always remember.
No deal is better than a bad deal. Be willing to walk away.
Right. Okay, next reality bender. The fair fallacy. The word fair.
Oh yeah, this one gets used as a weapon all the time to make you feel guilty or defensive.
Like when someone says, we just want what's fair, implying you're being unfair.
Exactly. Voss suggests a calm response. Okay, I apologize. Let's stop everything. Tell me where I started treating you unfairly and we'll fix it.
Puts it back on them to define unfair.
Totally. Or if they say, we've given you a fair offer, you could just mirror fair, pause, then label. It seems like you're ready to provide the evidence that supports that.
Again, shifting the burden, declaws the attack.
But you can use fair positively too by setting the stage early. Look, I want you to feel like you were being treated fairly throughout this. So please stop me anytime if you feel I'm being unfair and we'll address it.
Establishes you as reasonable from the start, proactive fairness.
Exactly. Frames you well.
Okay, still bending reality. Let's talk tactics from prospect theory. Kahneman and Tversky again.
Right. This taps into how people perceive gains and losses differently. First, anchor their emotions.
How?
Start with an accusation audit. Mention the potential downsides, the negatives, the losses up front. People take bigger risks to avoid losses than to achieve gains. So you prime them for the pain of not reaching a deal.
Make the status quo seem less appealing.
Sort of. Then, on price. Let the other guy go first, mostly.
Why? To avoid offering too much.
Exactly. Avoids the winner's curse, where your first offer is way higher than they would have accepted. Let them set the initial anchor, unless you really know the market well and can drop an extreme anchor yourself.
What if they push you to go first?
Voss suggests maybe alluding to what others might charge a really high number without actually stating your price. Deflects it.
Okay. Another tactic. Establish a range.
Yeah, instead of saying, I want $150,000, say something like, positions like this usually pay between $130,000 and $170,000.
How does that help?
It anchors them, but the lower end of your range suddenly seems more reasonable by comparison to the higher end. Research shows people using ranges often get higher results.
Interesting. What about non-money items?
Pivot to non-monetary terms. Always look for things that are valuable to them but cheap for you to give.
Like Voss getting on the cover of that magazine.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
He took a lower fee for his training but got priceless advertising in return. Cost a bar association almost nothing. That's creative deal-making.
Find the hidden value. And when you do make a monetary offer?
Use odd numbers. Don't offer $5,000. Offer like $4,751.
I have a weird number.
It feels calculated, like you arrived at that specific number through careful thought and analysis, not just pulling it out of thin air. Makes it seem less negotiable, more firm.
Like the 1,829 rent example. It seems oddly specific.
Exactly. Gives it credibility.
Yeah.
And finally, surprise with a gift.
A gift in a negotiation.
An unexpected conciliatory gesture. Doesn't have to be big. It treats as reciprocity. Like when Egyptian President Sadat went to speak to the Israeli Knesset. Huge symbolic gesture that built massive goodwill.
Okay, those are some powerful reality-bending tools. Next up, create the illusion of control. This seems central to Voss's method.
It really is. And the main tool here, calibrated questions.
We talked about how am I supposed to do that? Is that one?
That's a classic. Calibrated questions usually start with how or what. Never why, usually.
Why not why?
Why sounds accusatory. Puts people on the defensive immediately. Like,
Yeah.
why did you do that? Instant defensiveness.
Okay, so stick to how and what. How do they create the illusion of control?
They're open-ended. They gently force the other person to think, to problem solve, but to solve your problem. How can we make this work? What would need to happen for this project to move forward?
So they feel like they're figuring it out.
Exactly. They're generating solutions, feeling in charge, but you are guiding the conversation with your questions, like that doctor with the patient trying to leave the hospital.
Right. He asked, what felt so important about leaving? And the patient ended up choosing to stay.
The patient solved the problem, felt in control, but reached the outcome the doctor wanted. Brilliant.
And managing your own side of this, Voss talks about biting your tongue.
Crucial. That pause. When you get hit with something provocative, your first reaction is often emotional limbic system stuff. You need to pause, let that fade. Let your rational brain, the neocortex, catch up.
Avoid that impulsive, angry reply.
That pause can literally save the whole deal. Prevents saying something you'll regret.
And part of this control is knowing who else is involved, right? The behind-the-table players.
Absolutely critical. The people not in the room who can kill the deal later. Bosses, legal departments, spouses sometimes.
The stakeholders who weren't part of the negotiation?
Right. Voss mentions deals falling apart, that Dos Palmas hostage crisis, a training deal, because these level 2 players weren't brought into the process.
If you haven't influenced them, you haven't really got a deal.
You've got what Voss calls a hope-based deal. And hope is not a strategy.
Okay, so you've created the illusion of control, involved the right people. How do you make sure the deal actually happens? Guarantee execution.
This is where a Voss hammers home. Yes is nothing without how. Getting them to agree is step one. Getting them to figure out how to implement it is what makes it real.
And how do you do that? More calibrated questions.
Exactly. How will we know we're on track?
Right.
How does this affect the rest of the team? How do we ensure this gets done?
Again, making them articulate the implementation.
Which makes it their plan. Increases their buy-in and commitment massively. Like that kidnapping in Ecuador.
Where the how questions about logistics led to the guard falling asleep.
Yeah. The kidnappers hadn't fully thought through the how of keeping guard constantly because Voss kept pushing them on the details. Led to the escape.
And to really lock in that commitment.
Use the rule of three.
Get them to agree 3 times.
Essentially, yes. Get them to affirm their agreement or commitment in 3 different ways during the conversation. Use labels, summaries, calibrated questions that lead to a yes or that's right.
Why 3 times?
It's just hard to fake conviction repeatedly. If they can agree 3 times, it's much more likely they genuinely mean it and will follow through.
Okay, makes sense. What about spotting if someone isn't being genuine? Liars.
Voss points to the 7-38-55% rule. You know this one.
Words, tone, body language.
Right. 7% words, 38% tone of voice, 55% body language. The key is incongruence. If the words say yes, but the tone is hesitant and the body language is closed off.
Trust the tone and body language.
Absolutely.
Yep.
They reveal the discomfort or potential deception. Also listen to pronouns.
Pronouns, like I versus we.
Yeah. Lots of I, me, my might mean they have authority. Lots of we, them could mean they're deferring to others like the real power to decide. It's a clue.
Subtle. And one more trick, the Chris discount.
Yeah. Using your own first name in the conversation. How can Chris help make this work for you?
Why does that work?
Creates forced empathy. It humanizes you, makes it harder for them to be aggressive or object strongly, like when Voss used it with that angry veteran in a bar. Makes it personal, less transactional.
Okay, lots of psychological tools there. Now let's talk about actually haggling, bargain hard. First, understanding who you're dealing with. Negotiator styles.
Right. Voss breaks them into 3 main types. Knowing which one you're facing helps you adapt.
What are they?
First, analysts. These are your methodical, data-driven folks. They value accuracy, can seem slow. Silence, for them, usually means they're thinking. Don't rush them.
Okay, analysts. Next.
Accommodators. Relationship-focused, want harmony, might avoid conflict. For them, silence can mean they're upset or uncomfortable. Need reassurance.
Got it. And third.
Assertives. Goal-oriented, direct, can be aggressive. They value winning. For them, silence is often an opportunity to jump in and talk more. Or they might see your silence as weakness.
And we tend to assume everyone's like us, right? The I am normal paradox.
Big trap. You have to recognize their style and adjust yours. Doesn't mean being fake, but maybe dialing up your analytical side for an analyst, or being more relationship-focused with an accommodator.
Adaptability is key. And you need to be ready for them to come out swinging, right? Taking a punch.
Definitely. Mike Tyson's quote, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth."
Meaning?
Expect an extreme anchor, sometimes a ridiculously low or high first offer, designed to shock you, throw you off balance.
And the key is not to react defensively.
Exactly. Don't get flustered. Don't immediately compromise towards their crazy number. Use it as information. Wow, that seems really high-low. How did you arrive at that figure? Use their punch to learn about their limits.
Stay calm, gather intel. Okay, and then there's a specific haggling process Voss recommends, the Ackerman bargaining model.
Yes, from an ex-CIA guy, Mike Ackerman. It's a structured 6-step approach that uses a lot of these psychological principles implicitly.
Okay, break it down for us. Step 1.
Set your target price, your ambitious but realistic goal.
Step 2.
Make your first offer at 65% of that target. This is your own extreme anchor setting the low end.
65%. Okay, then what?
Step 3. Make subsequent offers in decreasing increments. This is key.
Yeah.
Your raises get smaller each time. Maybe go to 85% of your target, then 95%, then finally 100%. But the jumps get smaller, signaling you're reaching your limit.
So it's not equal jumps. 65, 85, 95, 100 of the difference.
Or target. Usually calculated based on your target price, but the increases diminish. For example, offer 65%, then 85%, then 95%, then the final 100% of your target. The increments shrink. The point is the shrinking increment signal you're running out of room.
Got it. Shrinking steps. What's step 4?
Throughout this, use empathy, labels, calibrated questions. You're not just throwing numbers, you're constantly using the other tools to keep them engaged, understand their pushback, and elicit counteroffers.
Keep the connection going. Step 5.
Use non-round numbers for your offers, especially the later ones. Makes them seem calculated and firm.
That odd number trick again. And the final step. Step 6.
On your final offer, the 100% target price, throw in a non-monetary item they probably don't want.
Why add something they don't want?
It signals you're truly tapped out. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel, throwing in extras just to make the number work. Shows you're at your absolute limit.
Like, okay, here's my final price, and I'll throw in these floor mats.
Exactly. Voss used this whole process to buy a Toyota 4Runner way below sticker price. And that $4,751 ransom in Haiti that was likely derived from this kind of calculated, non-round final offer.
It's a very structured dance, using psychology all the way.
Very effective when you need to haggle hard.
Okay, now for the really deep stuff, the ultimate breakthrough. Finding black swans.
Yeah, this is about uncovering the truly unexpected, the game changers.
Define a black swan again.
It's a hidden piece of information, an unknown unknown, something you didn't even know you didn't know, that completely changes the negotiation landscape if you find it.
Different from known stuff we know, and known unknown stuff we know we need to find out.
Exactly. Black swans are the complete surprises that shift everything. He uses the Rochester bank crisis in '81 as a tragic example.
William Griffin killed a hostage on deadline. Very unusual.
Highly unusual. The FBI was blindsided because they missed the black swans. Griffin was likely suicidal. He'd killed before. His note didn't even have clear demands.
They were working off standard hostage-taker assumptions.
Right, the known knowns of hostage negotiation. And missed the clues that this situation was fundamentally different. That makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In your own life, what unexpected twist, what piece of info totally changed a situation you thought you understood? Finding those black swans. That's often where breakthroughs happen.
You have to be open to the possibility that your assumptions are wrong. So how do you hunt for these black swans?
One key way is to know their religion, worldview.
Not literally religion, though.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It means digging deep into their core beliefs, their values, their reason for being. What really drives them? What authorities do they respect? God, the market, fairness, family.
Eyes knowing that's so powerful.
Because it gives you normative leverage. People tend to act consistently with their core beliefs and defer to authorities they genuinely respect. If you understand that, you can frame solutions within their worldview.
Like that Dwight Watson standoff in D.C., the farmer on the tractor.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
FBI agent Winnie Miller listened deeply, uncovered his devout Christian faith. That was his religion.
And she used that.
She suggested he surrender on the dawn of the third day, tying it directly to the resurrection story. It gave him an honorable way out, consistent with his deepest beliefs. She found the black swan of his faith.
That's incredible insight. What if someone just seems crazy?
Irrational, Voss's device. It's not crazy, it's a clue. Resist the urge to dismiss weird behavior as just crazy.
See it as a signal.
Exactly. A signal that you're missing information. There might be hidden constraints, different interests you don't understand, or maybe they're just badly informed.
Like the employee suing for $25K who seemed nuts.
Until they realized he just didn't understand his benefits package. He wasn't crazy, just misinformed. Or the Coke contact who went silent, not irrational, just caught in internal politics.
So crazy is often just a black swan you haven't uncovered yet.
If you're willing to look for the clue instead of just judging.
And one final tip for finding these hidden gems.
The power of FaceTime. Get face-to-face if you can.
Why is that so important?
Those unguarded moments before the meeting starts, walking to the elevator afterwards, that's often when the real information comes out. People let their guard down. You pick up on nonverbals you'd miss otherwise. It's often more revealing than hours of research.
Those informal moments can be gold mines for black swans.
Absolutely. So really what Voss teaches is that great negotiation isn't about winning arguments with logic. It's about mastering human psychology, understanding emotions, and truly, deeply listening.
It's applied people smarts, basically, but with real, tangible results.
Exactly. And these aren't just for FBI agents.
No, that's the amazing part. These skills, developed in life or death situations, they work everywhere. Negotiating your salary, buying a car.
Even getting your teenager to clean their room, maybe. The underlying principles of influence and understanding are universal.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think it means not being afraid of difficult conversations, maybe even leaning into them.
Right. Seeing conflict not just as danger, but as opportunity. Opportunity for connection, for finding better solutions.
Voss calls this stuff emotional intelligence on steroids. The ability to get what you want, maybe without giving much up, but leaving the other person feeling genuinely understood, even good about it, if that's possible. What does that say about the real power dynamics in all our interactions?
That's a powerful thought. And connecting it a bigger picture. The world is full of these hidden factors, these unknown unknowns. The people who get good at uncovering them and adapting to them, they're the ones who are truly effective. Which leads to a final question for you. What hidden assumptions, what things you think you know might actually be blinding you right now? Blinding you to the black swans in your own life that could unlock your next big breakthrough?